Yes, we'll be starting with the topic titled Inflation and Deflation. The first slide displayed is all about inflation and deflation itself. While the second slide starts with the definition of the concepts. The first one we're talking about is inflation. Before I move on, I think I need to control my audience. I need to mute them in order not to distract the class. Yes, I think we can move on now. So in economics, inflation is a rise in the general level of prices of goods and services in an economy over a period of time. When general price level rises, each unit of currency buys fewer goods and services. Consequently, inflation also reflects an erosion in the purchasing power of money. A lot of goods value in the internal medium of exchange and unit of account in the economy. A chief measure of price inflation is the inflation rate, the annualized percentage change in a general price index, normally the consumer price index over time. The summary of what we just discussed, mentioned here now, is the fact that inflation is the expression of how prices of goods kept increasing over time across all aspects of goods in the economic over. And when this happens, then the medium of exchange, which is money, declines in value, and to a point that the value of money will be totally eroded, which later transferred, which later can actually lead to the loss in real value in the internal medium of exchange and unit of account in the economy. This is explained when someone, for instance, decides to keep his money in the bank. Let's say person saves 100,000, and the value of what 100,000 can buy before inflation, compared to when there is a 10% increase in inflation value after some time, that is also equivalent directly to a 10% decrease in the value of 100,000 kept in the bank, because the goods and services the person will be able to buy will be reduced by that proportion. That's what this second slide has demonstrated to us. In the next slide, effects of inflation. Inflation's effects on an economy are various and can be simultaneously positive and negative. Yes, we explained this too. Negative effects of inflation include a decrease in the real value of money and other monetary items over time. Uncertainty over future inflation may discourage investment and savings, and high inflation may lead to shortage of goods if consumers begin hoarding out of concern that prices will increase in the future. Positive effects include ensuring central banks can adjust nominal interest rates intended to mitigate recession, and encouraging investment in non-monetary capital projects. This is to caution the effects that inflation will have, also thereby encouraging productivity after the period of inflation, because that's when people go into investment. High inflation. Economists generally agree that high rates of inflation and hyperinflation are caused by excessive growth of the money supply. That is, where there is so much money in circulation, more than the available quantities of goods that they can buy. So low or moderate inflation may be attributed to fluctuations in real demand for goods and services, or changes in available supplies, such as during scarcities, as well as to growth in the money supply. So what can cause low or moderate inflation is if there is a fluctuation in real demand for goods and services, or the available supplies of those goods decreases, that may need to become scarce, as well as the growth in the money supply, as that is the major reason for hyperinflation as well. Long period of sustained inflation is caused by money supply going faster than the rate of economic growth. types of inflation. There are four main types of inflation. We have wage inflation. Wage inflation is also called as demand pull or excess demand inflation. This type of inflation occurs when the total demand for goods and services in an economy exceeds the supply of the same. When the supply is less, the prices of these goods and services would rise, leading to a situation called as demand pull inflation. This type of inflation affects the market economy adversely during the wartime. Cost push inflation, as the name suggests, if there is increase in the cost of production of goods and services, there is likely to be a forceful increase in the prices of finished goods and services. For instance, a rise in the wages of laborers will raise the unit cost of production, and this will lead to rise in prices for the related end product, most especially when the elasticity of demand for that goods is when the elasticity of demand for that goods is inelastic. Yes. This type of inflation may or may not occur in conjunction with demand pull inflation. It depends. So this is a graph that typically explains what we're talking about here. Yeah. In the figure, we have automobile market being analyzed through that graph. The price of automobiles is on the y-axis, vertical axis, while the quantities produced is on the x-axis, which is the horizontal axis. The line S, the line depicted X is the supply curve, while D0 and D1 are the demand curve. So, like I was saying, D0 and D1 are the demand curves. And before inflation, the point of equilibrium is P0 and Q0, which is on the D0 and S where they met. When inflation occurs, the price jumped from P0 to P1, leading to increase in demand from Q0 to Q1. So that explains that we are dealing with demand pull inflation. What led to the price hike was increase in demand. Yes, it was because the demand moved forward that led to increments in price. If we can recollect very well, in the study of theory of demand and supply, the equilibrium price and quantity tend to react to the changes in either demand or supply individually sometimes. So that is what actually happened here. While for cost push inflation, we are still using explaining with the same market, automobile market. In the same vein too, the meeting points whereby we have the equilibrium is where we have P naught and Q naught, P0 and Q0, where S0 and the demand is not labeled. The other curve that is never labeled is the demand curve. So they met at point P naught and Q naught in the first instance. But because there is an increment in the cost of production, the inputs, the factory requirements, the machineries, the plants, all of that, because there is an increment in them, it increases the cost of supply, and that is transferred directly to the price with which those goods are produced. So what I can easily explain here is the fact that we can see that there is an increase in supply. Yes, producers are after making more profits. So when the cost of production has increased, they will be hopeful that they have to increase price and sell more quantity. But when you look at this, you realize that there is a drop in the supply. Yes, because there is an increment in the price of producing goods and services, then the supply has to shift backward. When there is reduction in supply, automatically the consumers will have to oblige the price because there will be less of those goods that will be made available. So, and they will be at the mercy of the suppliers. Pricing power inflation is more often called as administered price inflation. That is, this type of inflation occurs when the business houses and industries decide to increase the price of their respective goods and services to increase their profit margins. A point noteworthy is pricing power inflation does not occur at the time of financial crisis and economic depression, or when there is a downturn in the economy. This type of inflation is also called as oligopolistic inflation because oligopolies have the power of pricing their goods and services. What do we mean? Oligopoly is a market structure wherein we have a group of suppliers coming together in order to dictate prices and the amount of quantities of goods they will supply. We have different types, but the point is that is where we have like cartel. A good example is OPEC, a group of oil producing companies, oil producing country or economy that came together in order to operate as a unified front to dictate how much is supplied by each of them in order to regulate the price of that product in the market. So that is what this is talking about. Sectoral inflation. This is the fourth major type of inflation. The sectoral inflation takes place when there is an increase in the price of the goods and services produced by a certain sector of industries. For instance, an increase in the cost of crude oil will directly affect all the other sectors which are directly related to the oil industry. In fact, in Nigeria, when there is a problem with the crude oil, expect that there is a unified problem across board because every other thing is almost likely linked to oil, because most of the goods that are produced are meant to be transported to where they are being bought or when they are being utilized, or we need to add place utility to them, and that gives rise to the fact that whatever has happened to the fuel will actually affect the cost of transportation, and that will be passed on to the consumer through the cost push inflation that we talked about, because cost of production has increased. Thus, the ever increasing price of fuel has become an important issue related to the economy all over the world. In fact, Nigeria is a very distinct example. Take the example of inflation industry. When the price of oil increases, the ticket fares will also go up. Yes, this will lead to a widespread inflation throughout the economy, even though it had originated in one basic sector. If this situation occurs when there is a recession in the economy, there will be layoffs and it will adversely affect the workforce and the economy in turn. Other types of inflation, fiscal inflation, occurs when there is excess government spending. This occurs when there is a deficit budget. For instance, America is also facing fiscal type of inflation under the president of George W. due to excess spending in the defense sector. That was there. In the recent time, if going by the present COVID-19 outbreak and its impact in the economy, the federal government decides to increase its spending in order to curb the impact. It may lead to fiscal inflation. Hyperinflation is also known as runaway inflation or galloping inflation. This type of inflation occurs during or soon after a war. It can usually lead to the complete breakdown of the country's monetary system. However, types of inflation is short-lived. To sum up, any type of inflation could affect the economy of a country badly. So this a cup explaining hyperinflation. Let me try to explain this. The PL1 and the first point of meeting aggregate demand is that AD. So AD1 meets PL1 at that first point. At that point, that's the starting of, that's where the economy was before inflation started occurring. Because it is hyperinflation, it continues to increase and it continue to shoot the price up, up, up from PL2, PL3 to PL4 until when the economy will totally break down, because the price will be unbearable. People will not even have money to buy it again, and everything will actually lead into depression, because this will be out of recession if it is not checked on time. Now, the practical meaning of inflation is what is next to be explained now. No, we have come beyond all this. We passed all this, sorry. Yeah. Measures to control inflation. Given that inflation shows the imbalance between supply and demand of goods at current prices, so that measures be taken to reduce demand or increase supply of goods and services. The supply side measures. In order to control inflation from the supply side, it is necessary that the supply of goods and services can be increased by increasing agricultural and industrial production. Like I said, it is because of the shortage of goods in the economy that inflation will rise. If there is a surge in the amount of goods and money supply in the economy, and there is a corresponding direct increment in supply of goods and services at the same time, then there cannot be inflation, because the available goods will price out the increment in the price of goods and services. So agricultural production can be increased by providing an adequate supply of agricultural inputs at low prices, the modernization of agriculture and scientific farm management, adequate water supply for irrigation, industrial production, etc. Similarly, can be increased by increased foreign direct investment, industrial credit growth, fiscal concession. So these are the measures that can be adopted in order to increase production. That is the two areas that need to be um, looked into and affected is agriculture and industrial aspect of the economy. So when these two aspects of the economy are actually um, accelerated in terms of their production level, then there will be a discontinuation of inflation. Control of illegal activities. There are some illegal activities that cause significant inflation in a country. It is hoarding, smuggling, profiteering, black markets. In the case of smuggling of large quantities of staples like sugar, butter, wheat, rice, etc., they are exported abroad illegally in order to obtain higher prices. Similarly, the shortage in most cases artificial staples to create higher profit. When we say staples, those are the most common type of foods that are consumed, the common consumption, common goods that are consumed. Those are the staples. A good example is rice. A good example is garri across Nigeria. A good example is beans to an extent and all that. So that's what we call staples. So all aspects of this evil must be controlled through advertising as well as punishment. Peace and security. Production and distribution of goods and services can be affected due to the existence of disturbances and insecurity in society. This need to be overemphasized, because when there is insecurity, it will not be impossible for us to embark on production. People will be fearing for their lives in a situation whereby Boko Haram has occupied the larger part of Borno. Those that are farming in that part of the country will have to flee for their lives. They have to abandon their farms. As a result of that, there will be a drop in the quantity produced of those particular goods that are produced from that end. If it now spread across the country, what will happen? A good example, if you read about the civil war of 1967 to 70 in Nigeria, I think this will be clearer to us. So that one of the reasons why inflation can be encouraged is when there is no peace and security. Yeah. In such circumstances, investors are hesitant to invest for fear of potential loss. Similarly, the production of industrial products is affected due to several unpleasant events such as strikes. Therefore, peace and security must be ensured to maintain the supply of goods and avoid the danger of famine. Why is this going back? Main energy sources. The supply of agricultural and industrial products is highly dependent on energy availability. If the energy source is expensive, the cost of production of these resources will be expensive too. Increase production costs, raise prices, and cause inflation. We have actually overemphasized that in this discussion. Therefore, all necessary measures be taken to provide major sources of energy in industrial and agricultural sectors of the economy. The demand side, we have only talked about the supply side so far, the demand side and supply side so far. So we want to talk about the demand side now. Control of money supply. The money supply has a great influence on the rising inflation. That is Inflation with increasing the money supply and vice versa. That is, inflation will always occur when there is an increase in money supply, and decrease in money supply will lead to disinflation or deflation if it is too much to be contained. Therefore, to control inflation, measures must be taken to control the money supply. The money supply can be controlled with the help of monetary policy, in which the central bank uses various methods such as bank rate policy, open market operations, changes in reserve requirements, credit rationing, directive action. All these methods are useful to control the rate of inflation in a country. Population control. Yes, in most developing countries, the population is increasing very quickly that the production of goods and services does not increase at the same pace. Because the imbalance between supply and demand of goods and services are produced and cause inflation. Therefore, to control inflation, appropriate measures will be taken to control the population. This is not totally acceptable in the when we talk about the normative economics, because a good example, for instance, is China, whereby they have the largest population in the world, and they, if not the second largest economy in the world at present time. So what happens? So controlling population is not a good measure to control inflation, because this actually can be linked to the theory propounded by Malthus, who says as a point in the earlier part of the world, when there was a mismatch between the production of means of subsistence foods majorly and the rate at which people were going. People population was increasing at a geometric rate at that time, while production of means of subsistence was increasing at an arithmetic rate. So it now propounded then that if this is not checked, there will be famine, there will be onslaught, there will be, in fact, the whole economy in the world will be collapsed. But going by the realities of the present world, none of this has happened. So I want to personally, as an authority in my own way, debunk this particular point, that population control cannot be a solution to reducing or correcting the issue of inflation. Fiscal policy refers to government policy of public spending and taxes. The main fiscal policy objective is to maintain only the slight change in the general price level. During inflation, the government tries to reduce its expenditure on unproductive activities, and the direct tax rate increases so that the purchasing power of the population is reduced. Due to the reduction in the purchase of the population, demand for goods and services will be reduced and controlled inflation. We are almost through. We are almost through. Almost through. Second measure is there should be no deficit financing. Yeah, deficit financing shows. Well, let me quickly explain that. This comes up based on the budgetary allocation. When the budget is prepared and income is less or has a shortfall compared to the expenditure projected for that year, then there is a budget deficit. So budget deficit financing is a way of trying to borrow money in order to make sure that the expenditure and the income are at par. So the excesses in the expenditure aspect, when it is actually provided for and spent, that's when we have deficit financing. So it shows that the public spending beyond their income. The purpose of deficit financing is to meet the additional cost that budget debt actually put up. Because the money supply increases in a country and causes inflation, therefore the deficit financing should be discouraged, and all development costs must be met through taxes and debts. So direct measures, there are several other options available to the government to control inflation and wage and price growth. The rationale of goods, establishment of public service shops, the price review committees, boards of price stabilization. These direct measures are often used by the government to control inflation. Deflation. There is not much to talk about in deflation. It's like almost opposite to inflation. The first to continuous fall in the price level, not increase in the price level, like we said. This happens in recession period. If it lasts for longer period, it harms the growth and development of the economy. The government should adopt policies which are similar to the situation of recession, e.g., increase income by reducing taxes, generate employment, adopt policies which enhance production. So this is where we end in this presentation. Yes, students, you'll be allowed to talk. If you have questions or any of the points discussed so far is not clear to you, you have the floor. I thought I've unmuted all of you. Unmute yourself so and talk. Amina, Toiba, Nafisa. Hello.
Sir,
Any question? Any clarification?
no, sir.
You sure you understand everything? I'll ask you a question. What happened? Amina, you can't unmute. Oh yeah, unmute now. Do it now. What you do? Toiba, unmute yourself. I want to hear your voice. So Amina, is there any question?
No, sir.
You should understand what we've said so far. Or you were not in the class, just on your phone and left.
Huh?
Eh?
I was in the class. All the way there is too big, but I was in the class.
If it is too big, you can ask me now. That's why I'm asking you. Is there any question?
No worries. No question.
I'm worried though, because I want you to understand. That's why we are doing this.
Sir, please, can you take the hyperinflation? Sorry, I
So
got a little bit distracted.
when we talk of hyperinflation, we are talking about a type of inflation that is actually caused by war situation. In the sense that at that time there is a lot of down tools. When we say down tools, that is there is no production. So immediately the war ends, there will be a rush to catch up for what has not been happening. Productive activity will have to resume. So in doing that, government will want to support and they want to pump more money into the economy. By so doing, in fact, they can't just do it at once, so they continue to do over time. And that, like we have mentioned and highlighted and identified, that there is actually high level of inflation. Is most of the time inflation is usually caused by money supply increase. So that money supply into the economy will actually lead to inflation, and that inflation will not cease to continue to increase over time. You understand now? It will, if it is 5%
Yes, sir.
now, before the next 2 weeks, you will see it being 10%. Before the next 2 weeks, it will be like 15%. So it continues to increase like that over time if it's not cheap. But according to the material, they said it doesn't last long. But I have a different opinion to that, because what I know about hyperinflation is that it's a runaway, it's a galloping one. You cannot catch up with it. So, and that only happens over time too. So for them to have said it doesn't last, maybe number of years they are talking about, I don't know. But the reality is that if it is galloping inflation or hyperinflation, it happens for a long time. I hope you understand now.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other question? In the absence of any other one, I think we are through with the class. and we can actually appreciate your coming. And we hope you benefit from this. Make sure you are reading your book. I am expectant that anytime from now, the government may have to call you back to school to do your exams. So make sure you are preparing as if your exams are tomorrow. So all the best. I want to come to
Makes sense. You're welcome.